All right, welcome everyone. I'm glad you could make it today to our OISS COVID-19 update FAQ. This is actually a re-recording of the presentation we did live last week, had some technical difficulties. I'm going to go ahead and try to start the PowerPoint, and we will talk over that same information that we covered on Friday for all of you to join in if you missed it or if you want to review anything. So we will get this going. All right, so should now be seeing the slides coming up. Okay, so first of all, welcome. Thank you for following us, for joining us for this presentation of sorts, recorded presentation. We just want a chance to try to connect with our international community at UNLV, to do our best to try to support you and get you information since we can't, of course, meet in person during this time. Hope you're all doing safe. Hope you're all doing well and are safe and healthy. The first thing I just wanted to remind everyone who might be watching this is that OISS is still open. We are still, well, maybe open with air quotes is a better way of putting it, but we're all actively working remotely to try to help you. Many of you might have already had remote or virtual advising appointments with your advisors or with me. You can reach us all by phone, by email. We're doing a lot of web appointments, Zoom, WebEx, Google Hangouts, whatever might work. So as usual, your F1 advisor contact information there, my contact information is there if you have scholar inquiries. But we are definitely working normal business hours, Monday through Friday, to try to help you out. So let us know what we can do for you or if you need to talk with an advisor. We're not going anywhere in the midst of this crazy time. We're still here working for you. The other thing I want to do is remind you all to please, if you haven't, follow us on social media. Obviously, that's a really good way to try to stay in touch and stay connected with us right now because you can't necessarily come see us in person. We are active on both Facebook and Instagram. The handle for both is the @UNLV OISS. I have the URLs there as well. And so we are going to be posting a lot of regular updates. We have some plans in the works to post regulatory updates on a frequent basis. I also sent out an email a while ago, our office did, about our You Are One of a Kind campaign. So we're trying to give all you a chance to get to know us. First of all, we share a little bit about ourselves and our lives during this time. And we're also inviting you to participate. So if you want to fill out the survey link there, you'll have a chance to answer a couple questions about your hobbies, what you're doing for stress relief, maybe some pictures of you, your loved ones, and it's a good chance to just build that community virtually while we can't be together face to face. So I also want to start this off by going over some resources that I think are going to be helpful for all of you in the coming weeks or months. You might want to refer back to. A lot of it I'll talk about elsewhere in the presentation. The first one on there is actually by NAFSA, the Professional Association of International Educators. They have a fantastic compilation of resources about COVID-19 as it relates to international education, both on the student and scholars population side. I will forewarn you that the resources are geared more towards professionals in higher education, so people in our office like myself and the advisors, but certainly there's information on there about travel restrictions and regulatory updates, etc., related to COVID-19 that might be useful for you to take a look at as well. I certainly follow NAFSA's resources pretty closely, as does everyone in our office. Our own OISS, excuse me, has also started an FAQ, frequently asked questions link on our OISS homepage. When you go to the OISS homepage, it's right there at the top. It says updates. I think it says COVID-19 FAQ or coronavirus FAQ. We're updating that routinely with a lot of the questions that you keep asking us, things about employment or OPT or graduation or deadlines or things of that nature. So take a look at that as well. A couple of useful links on here regarding the IRS stimulus refund, the checks or direct deposits of around $1,200 that some of you may have received or might have questions about. These are some IRS links about it. And also, importantly, NRAT, Non-Resident Alien Tax Services. Debbie Honrath is a staff person at UNLV who can primarily answer your questions about that, and we're going to talk about it a little later too. I also am posting a link that has the text of the actual 60-day immigration suspension, quote unquote, executive order that was issued last Wednesday, I think is when it was signed, last Tuesday. So you can review that text. The link at the bottom here is the Department of State country-specific information. We get lots of questions from individuals that are traveling to or from, South Korea or China or Venezuela or Spain or wherever the case might be, and they want to know what are the travel restrictions there? Can you get a flight there? Can you get a flight back? Are there quarantine rules for different provinces or regions? Obviously, that's changing constantly throughout the world on a daily or weekly basis. The best resource I know of is this bottom URL, Department of State country-specific information. You can go on there and choose one specific country and get a really nice summary of all the regions that might be subject to quarantines, whether flights are readily available. It's just a fantastic resource to stay up to date on the regions that you particularly care about when it comes to your travel plans or your family, your loved ones, etc. I apologize, I have a duplicate links right there. The last link I have here is actually to 3Square, which I wanted to include. That's the major food bank organization in town that I'm aware of. So I know this is a really hard time economically for a lot of people. You may be one of those individuals who's struggling right now, and 3Square is a great place you might be able to obtain some assistance, with getting food during this time if you need that. All right, so we'll cover some general updates too that might apply to a couple of different visa categories. I know we may have some students watching this, we may have professors, we may have researchers, interns, etc., different visa types. So first, some general information right now. Obviously, the instruction is remaining online the rest of the spring semester. And at the very least, it's going to be doing that for probably summer terms 1 and 2. I have not received any official notice about summer 3 or beyond, but right now planning on being online. Now, those of you that are F1 students know there's generally a restriction on how many online classes you can take each semester for immigration law. That is temporarily suspended right now. So as we've announced before, and it's on our FAQ, I think as well, you can remain in your online classes and still keep your F1 CVIS record active at this time. That also includes if you are, doing that overseas. If you left maybe a few weeks ago or a month ago and are finishing the semester online, we still have your I-20 record active. A couple of other things. U.S. embassies and consulates overseas are closed for all purposes or almost all purposes, routine visa purposes at present. That's pretty much throughout every country, as far as I'm aware. There might be a handful that have been reopening or partially reopening or will soon be reopening. There again, you need to check your specific country and your specific embassy or consulate to see. I have heard anecdotally that some consulates in some regions of East Asia are tentatively scheduling some appointments for the coming months. So you may be able to start doing that, but the appointments are still scheduled a ways out. There's also a handful of kind of emergency special request visa issuances that anecdotally I've heard of. Those are usually tied to extreme humanitarian need or particularly medical professionals that might be trying to return to the US. They've usually made special exceptions for that because obviously those services are desperately needed, but largely closed for now. Travel restrictions also remain in effect throughout, well, pretty much everywhere. I mean, I don't want to be cavalier, but certainly there are restrictions still in place for China, for Europe, quote unquote, essential travel only for Canada and Mexico right now, which basically means no travel for regular F1, H1B, J1 sort of visa categories without really special extenuating circumstances. There again, I have that travel.state.gov website linked where you can find out the latest, right? Because that is going to change in the coming weeks or months or days, whatever the case might be. You need to look for each country to see what's changing. All right, another big announcement that's been in the news that a lot of people have questioned about or emailed about is the executive order that was announced last week by the president, allegedly suspending immigration is what they said for 60 days. There was a lot of confusion about it because it was first announced with a tweet without the actual text or the legal text of the executive order available. That came out a couple of days later. I think it was last Wednesday. And, lawyers had a chance to actually read it. I had a chance to read it. First of all, to clarify, it only applies to immigrant visas. Immigrant is usually used in common speech to mean, any sort of international individual in the US. This is only talking about green cards, okay? It's only talking about lawful permanent residency green cards. It's not talking about F1 visas, H1B visas, J1s, TNs, etc. The other important thing about this order to understand is that it only applies to people who are outside of the US, or I should say who were outside of the US when it took effect last week. All right, so it's not influencing processes that are already in the US. If you were filing for a green card, filing what's called an I-485 adjustment of status with USCIS, no impact to that, to the best of my knowledge. It's only those that are outside the US trying to visit a US embassy or consulate to essentially obtain a green card and enter the US. Now, while that might sound serious, and in a sense it is, again, it's not applying to most of the visa types that our scholars and students are using right now at UNLV. And importantly, if you remember a moment ago, I said that US embassies and consulates are already closed or almost entirely closed throughout the world right now. So saying that you can't get a visa appointment for the next 60 days, I don't know that really has a major impact. So the consensus among most in our professional community is that the impact of this is really very small and very narrow, honestly. And as we say in English, more bark than bite. Now, there was something, I think it was section 6 of the order, that did cause some concern. It was a little bit vague, and it more or less said within the next, I don't know if it's 45 days, 60 days, I'd have to double check. It more or less said that we're going to look at other areas and look at other possibilities of things to restrict. Didn't give any details, didn't give any timeline on when those restrictions could even occur. A lot of that requires regulatory change, can't necessarily just be done by executive order. So something could come of that, but I'm not particularly concerned about that right now. Most immigration attorneys, I think, are not. But we will have to monitor and see. All right, another major update was electronic signature acceptance by USCIS. For those of you that are filing things with USCIS, whether it's an I-129 for H-1Bs, an I-539 changing status, I-765 for those applying for OPT, etc. USCIS did announce, I have the URL there, that during this pandemic, for safety reasons, they would be accepting certain electronic signatures. So you may be able to do that. Okay, another general update or two. So about the stimulus payments. First and foremost, if you have questions, even though I'm giving a little bit of basic information here, you need to contact the NRAT, Non-Resident Alien Tax Services staff at UNLV, and I have the email address right there. They are the tax experts at UNLV who are trained and qualified to answer your questions. Nobody in my office, myself included, is qualified legally to provide you with tax information. That being said, when the stimulus came out, there was also a lot of confusion. I think it's hundreds of pages long, this bill was, as to whether it applied to residents only, like legal, lawful permanent residents, green card holders, or residents for tax purposes, which is a different thing. It's a different meaning. It applies to tax law. It turns out that this bill for the stimulus appears to apply to residents for tax purposes, which means that some what we call non-immigrant aliens, those that are in F1 status, J1 status, H1B status, TN, etc., may in fact qualify for that. I say may. All right, maybe it's possible. It depends upon how long you've been in the US, how many days you've spent here. It depends upon if and how you filed your taxes in previous years, what income you might have earned. There's something called a substantial presence test that comes into play. These are complicated determinations that a tax specialist needs to look at. So if either one of two options, if you receive the stimulus payment and you want to make sure you received it correctly, that you were qualified and eligible for it. You need to contact in non-resident alien taxes, Debbie Honrath at UNLV, to confirm that, okay? And she will look at what you have filed for tax in previous years, see if that needs to be adjusted, make sure you got it for the correct reason. If you did not get it, and you think that you should have been eligible, again, you should contact non-resident alien taxes to try to see if your taxes were filed correctly, if you need to do correction to past year, etc. It's important to know if you were eligible for it. And unfortunately, it's not a quick, easy little slide where I can put a bullet on there to answer. You need to talk with a tax specialist, okay? Now, if you were eligible, if you confirm with non-resident alien tax services that you're eligible to receive the benefit, then that is a tax credit. It's not a negative factor for public charge. A lot of people were concerned about public charge. Will this weigh against me later on when I try to get a green card or H-1B? As long as you determine that you were eligible to get this benefit, the legal consensus I've seen, I saw a panel from Cornell Law, I think last week, is that this is not going to be a negative impact for public charge if you determined you were eligible for it. That's the important part. Okay, let's go into some other updates. First, some updates for F1 students. We'll talk a little bit about other visa statuses as well. First and foremost with F1 students is to talk about electronic I-20s. So you're probably used to only getting physically signed and printed I-20s directly from OISS because we have not been allowed to email those in the past. That rule has been suspended by SCVP, and so our advisors have been sending you electronic I-20s. We did get some communication from Department of State that they would be accepting these electronic I-20s, which you would then print and sign yourself from home or from elsewhere for visa interviews, for consulate embassy appointments. We have not officially gotten that word from CBP, which is who you interact with when you actually enter the country. But to the best of our knowledge, they're going to be accepting those also because other agencies are as well. So we are emailing that for the time because it's not very viable to be physically mailing so much when we're working remotely. Other item regarding F1 students is your spring semester plan. So a lot of you probably got a survey email asking you to tell us whether you were staying in the US semester, if you were withdrawing from classes, if you were going home to finish your classes remotely from your home country, whatever the case might be, we do need to know about it so that we can try to track how to update your I-20. If there's regulatory changes, we'll have to know who's in the US and who isn't. So it's really important that you keep us notified, okay? You fill out that survey. If you haven't already, check your email. You can also email your advisor directly and say, hey, I'm actually going home. I've got a flight in a few weeks, or I'm already abroad, but I want to come back. You need to email us individually so we can figure out your situation, how to advise you on that. Another important reminder for you right now, if you're in F1 status, is to check your I-20 program end date. Make sure it's not expiring. It might have already been expiring. It might have been shortened because you were planning to graduate, but now maybe you're not able to graduate. You need to check that I-20 end date, and if it's no longer accurate, contact our office right away so we can talk about that. Everyone's answer is going to be different depending upon your specific legal situation and where you're at with your classes and whatnot. Another update with F1 students is those that might be having difficulty in trying to return to their home country, especially, for example, maybe someone whose OPT is ending, and so their F1 status is ending, they can't get home, or someone whose I-20 is ending, they have a 60-day grace period, but they're not able to get a flight right now. First of all, please let us know, all right? If you haven't already, please email us so we can document that you're trying to return. Contact your embassy or consulate if you can. Many of you have embassies or consulates nearby in LA or Chicago or DC, wherever the case might be, to see some countries are helping facilitate repatriation efforts to their home countries for citizens that are here right now. Whatever you do, save the documentation showing that you put forth a good faith effort to try to return in a timely manner. Theoretically, you can also contact an immigration attorney to try to potentially file something like a bridge application or something to maintain status. you can also, again, hopefully you've talked with us, there might, and I say might, be options to try to extend your status by transferring to a new program or a language program or something of that nature. So communication is important there, and saving documentation is really important there. Some other questions that come up a lot. Unemployment insurance. So the thing about this, and it's a little complicated, I'll try to make sense of this. Unemployment insurance, unemployment benefits are determined at the state level. So Nevada's requirements for eligibility are different than, say, California's or Texas or North Dakota, or whatever the case might be. And if you're eligible for unemployment insurance, it's not particularly a public charge concern. USCIS has kind of posted that this wouldn't be a public charge concern if someone receives that type of benefit during COVID-19. However, the negative news is that we don't believe that most F1 students are going to be eligible to apply for unemployment insurance with the state of Nevada. There are some reasons for this. Some of the information you have to provide, you're not necessarily going to have as an F1 student. It may also be the case that you don't meet their eligibility criteria for having authorization to accept, whatever available employment comes up just by virtue of being F1. So I've actually tried to put in a request to Nevada Unemployment Insurance Office to confirm this. It's a little difficult to find just from their online information, but all the indicators are no. I've also got some pending confirmations I'm trying to get with an attorney as well to definitively answer that. But to the best of our knowledge, F1 students usually were not going to be eligible to apply for unemployment insurance here in Nevada. Even if it's not a public charge concern, you just won't be eligible, unfortunately. Right. All right, a few other things. F1 students and OPT. I know we have a lot of students who are on OPT right now, or we have students who are going to very soon be on OPT, who just applied or are about to apply and they're graduating. So a lot of questions and concern surrounding the amount of unemployment time you can have, how much time you have to effectively find a job, what to do if your OPT is ending. I first want to say that those are all very valid concerns. I understand, I sympathize completely. A number of professional groups such as NAFSA, the one I mentioned at the beginning, as well as AILA, the American Immigration Law Association, are all advocating for some changes and flexibility to these employment rules during the COVID-19 period. Unfortunately, none of that has occurred yet, but we expect it to occur. Well, I shouldn't say we expect it to occur. We hope that it occurs in the coming weeks or months, right? So there, it's being advocated for. I totally understand the need for it. I think that would be a wonderful thing. The unfortunate news is, as of today, nothing has changed in regards to USCIS or DHS rules surrounding really almost any employment category, including OPT. So unfortunately, still legally are bound to the maximum 90 days unemployment or 150 for STEM OPT. Really all the same rules apply. Now, they have said very minimally that teleworking and remote working is permissible. So for those on OPT, you could be doing that with approval from your supervisor, just like I'm doing now, working remotely. If that's viable for your job. Of course, it's not reasonable for all jobs. You do still have to report changes to your employment within 10 days online through the OPT portal. You need to notify your advisor. We do get questions about, well, if you're furloughed, it's a common term thrown out there, do you need to report that as unemployment? The answer to that depends, because that word means different things to different companies. You need to check with your human resources office and find out, are you still considered an employee? Are you on paid administrative leave? Or are they just essentially taking you off the payroll? You're not considered an employee, and they're just saying furloughed because it means you were laid off. You need the answer to those questions from your employer to find out whether you need to report a change to your OPT portal. Actual processing times for OPT are still pretty unpredictable right now. Officially, anywhere from about 2 to 5 months is what they have, I think, on their website right now. Anecdotally, in some cases, we're actually seeing it occur faster than we had expected this semester. But COVID-19, of course, throws a lot of uncertainty around that. So I don't know if it's going to stay that way, if it's going to speed up, if it's going to slow down. We just don't know. And we will know in the coming, I would guess, month or two to really, I think, get a feel for what the average is going to be. We've also had questions from those in OBT about trying to find employment and maintain their status. And I recognize it's a very difficult time to network, to find new jobs, to find a first job on OPT. I have connected with our career services staff at UNLV, who are also working remotely, by the way. So the first thing I wanted to add to that is to check their calendar for events. I know they're planning, they did do a virtual career fair this semester. They're working on some upcoming plans, hopefully this summer. So they may have other virtual career fairs or other networking opportunities that could be done remotely. Their staff is still working, so you can contact them for advice and help in trying to potentially maybe find a position or find a new position. But they are open and please utilize them. They're also still regularly updating the Hire a Rebel website, where they have employers that request specific, job openings for UNLV alumni that UNLV alumni can access. So take a look at that as well. Another thing I throw out there, remember that for a regular 12-month post-completion OPT, you are legally allowed to complete that via volunteer positions. So if you have a volunteer position that's at least 20 hours or more a week, directly related to your area, you could use that reported correctly through the portal and notifying your advisor to maintain your F1 OPT status. So obviously we will communicate any changes as soon as we get them. We are hoping for changes, but right now that's just the reality with OPT. Okay, and you can contact your advisor if you have any questions about that. A couple of words about J1 visas, those in J1 status here in the US, and there's a lot of different types there. I know some of you might be professors, some might be researchers, some might be students, some might be interns. There's a lot of different kinds of J categories at UNLV. You should have received communication from me, from our office, asking you about your program. Same sort of questions we asked the F1s. Are you doing your work remotely here? Are you traveling outside the US and doing it remotely? Are you ending your program early, etc.? Letting us know is critical so that we have your J1 record updated, okay? You need to notify us if you're leaving the US, if you're ending early, extending, whatever the case might be. Please contact me so that we can make sure your DS 2019 is updated, okay? Some J1 visitors received an email over the past couple of weeks about an automatic extension of your record. This occurred to a small number of J1 records based on when the program end date was, and that was automatic from the Department of State. So we've emailed you about arranging for the DS 2019s. Another big issue with J1s right now is also return travel. So if your program is ending or is about to end, I know there's difficulty in finding return transportation. The same things I said earlier apply here. So you need to notify us right away, please. You need to contact your nearest embassy or consulate to see if they have any resources to help you return home. When you might be able to anticipate returning home, there might be an option to extend your J1 program. So we'll talk about that. Save the documentation that you're trying to return home, but communication is key, right? We need to know about those things early. There's been no changes that I know of to other real regulatory issues regarding J1. So like academic training, for example, is unchanged right now. Most new J1 programs are being postponed until further notice, until things calm down here. A little bit of word about H1B or TN status. Our office is still absolutely processing H1B requests for hiring units or for people that are maybe extending their H1B if it expires soon. We have a number we're working on from a lot of different departments on campus. That process has definitely been slowed down because it was very difficult to transition all of this to remote, all the procedures that we use. It was definitely a challenge, but we're still working on them and getting better at that at the new remote operation. So if you have a question about one that's pending or one that you're going to be submitting or your department submitting, let us know. Now, one important change with the H1B is that from USCIS, the premium processing option was suspended due to COVID-19. So that means instead of the H1B getting approved or getting decided upon by USCIS within a couple of weeks, it may be many months, and there's no option to expedite it, at least not a simple option to expedite and pay for it. That's why contacting us early is really important. If you are extending an H-1B that you're already on it at UNLV, or if your department is rather, the impact is not so large because as long as we get it filed in time, you're able to continue working for, I believe, 240 days while it's pending. The bigger impact is first-time H-1Bs or those changing to H-1B status, as it may take many months. We, again, like similar to OPT, we don't know exactly how long this is going to take. Before COVID-19, anywhere from 2 months to 6 months seemed to be about the average for H-1B petition at USCIS without premium processing. Now, during the changes, we don't know. Initially, I had really worried that it might be much slower, but strangely enough, I'm hearing reports from some colleagues at other schools that they're actually getting some fast H-1B petition turnaround. So we don't know. And we'll monitor that. We have some petitions pending right now, so I hope to get an idea soon of how long that's going to be taking. One note I did want to add for any H-1Bs tuning into this is that even though UNLV has virtually all of its employees working remotely, as an H-1B, you still need to be working within the Las Vegas Valley area, called the MSA, Metropolitan Statistical Area. Might be forgetting the acronym at the moment, but within the US, you still need to be working geographically within the Las Vegas area because that's what your petition is based on. Now, if you happen to be outside of the US right now, that's different. That doesn't necessarily require an amended petition because you're not in H-1B status until you actually return. But while you're here this semester as an employee, you can't go to, Washington State, for example, and just be working there. So you do need to notify us if that's the case so we can talk about filing an amended H-1B for you. Some words about permanent residency. The biggest thing related to the executive order that I talked about earlier, remember that does not apply to anybody who's currently in the US. It's those who are outside the US, those that were trying to get appointments for a visa for permanent residence for green card at an embassy consulate. It's not the same as filing an I-485 to obtain a green card within the United States. If you have a green card case pending, employment-based here at UNLV, you should let me know if you have concerns. Contact your attorney, who's presumably Adam Green, Paul Herzog, if you're with us at UNLV. If you have an independent case, of course, you need to contact your own attorney about that filing. But from those within the US, there should not be any significant impact of this order right now. There's no change at present to UNLV's permanent residency sponsorship policy on campus, so we have not received any official directive about, for example, suspending or temporarily postponing something like green card sponsorship because of budget constraints. I know there might be some concern about that, but we've heard nothing about that. So that's not happening at this time. And again, contact us with specific questions. Speaking of questions, my favorite part of the slide, there were some pre-submitted questions that students and faculty and staff submitted before this began, and I want to quickly review some of them to make sure I've covered them. Somebody asked about travel signatures and if they can be issued, so that's for F1 students or J1s actually. For F1s, as I mentioned earlier, we can send electronic I-20s right now, so we can sign the I-20s and scan that to you, and then you can print it and sign it yourself. So you should contact your advisor. For J1s, you need to contact us. We have to actually physically mail it to you. We don't have the suspension of the physical copy requirement right now. There's a question about OPT policies. As I mentioned, there's no current change to OPT regulations at the federal level. There are groups advocating for it, like NAFSA and AILA, and we will keep you updated as soon as we hear anything. Unfortunately, right now, there's no significant change to that. So you have to look at creative solutions like, volunteer opportunities that meet the requirement for OPT to maintain your status, working with career services to try to see if there's anyone in Hire Rebel or other networks with UNLV that might be hiring, etc. There's questions about traveling to the home country and being able to return for fall semester. Obviously, we don't have a crystal ball, so we don't know for certain what fall semester is going to look like. Obviously, we're hoping things are a little more normalized with on-campus services and classes. But more importantly than that is we can't predict at this time how travel restrictions are going to change or when they're going to change. So earlier I mentioned the travel.state.gov website that will show you country by country what are the travel restrictions coming to and from the U.S. You're going to need to refer to that. So if you do travel internationally this summer, or if you are currently traveling internationally, you have to keep monitoring that to determine when you'll be able to return to the US, when quarantines, et cetera, are restricted or are lifted, I should say. Quarantines and restrictions are lifted by the US or by another country. So monitor that, contact us if you have any concerns. Obviously, much of that is out of our control, but we'll do our best to communicate with you. Now, we cannot communicate we can't communicate every change of travel restrictions because they keep changing country by country. As major developments happen, we will try to send that out to you as we can, but you really need to monitor that site or a different one. Let's see. Question about OBT. We addressed that. There was a question about delay in the school year and if there'd be an announcement about that. We've certainly received nothing official about a potential delay to the school year starting. I personally do not expect that to occur. We are hoping it's in person by fall. I think it's quite possible that it could be online or partially online in the fall. We don't know that just yet. We will tell you as soon as we know, is the best I can say. As soon as OISS has this information, we'll try to share that with you when it goes out with official university channels. There was a question about OPT employment start date changing. That's pretty particular, and you should really contact your advisor about that so we can look at how many employment days you have, etc. All right. Well, with that, I think that is about all we have today. And I want to thank all of you for tuning into this. I hope that it was useful. I hope that you gathered something from it, answered some of your questions. Please continue to follow us on social media and monitor your emails. We're going to do our best to try to stay in touch with you remotely. We have some other ideas in the works, some informational sessions, some informal sessions, just to say hello and stay connected during this time. So stay healthy, stay safe, take good care of yourself, and we are super looking forward to seeing you again. We miss all of you. We miss being on campus with you, and take care of yourself, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you.